Welcome back to my bookshelf. As you know, I've been unboxing tons of books from books I've collected through the years, and they've been mostly hanging out in my garage, but I bought a new house recently and I have space to shelve them, so I've been unboxing like crazy, trying to get ready to put them on a few bookshelves. And I have another box or two that I want to do today, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. This is my first box of books. It's a banker's box, and let's go ahead and open it up. And it looks like a box of paperbacks, and you know I have a lot of paperbacks, so let's get into it. The first one is Song of Susanna by Stephen King. As you know, I'm a big fan of The Dark Tower, and this is another in the series. And the books are a little longer than a normal paperback. You can, let's see the difference between the sizes. So I'm not sure why they did that. It makes shelving them all that much more difficult, but good series, in my opinion. Stephen King's a horror writer, of course, but this is more of a contemporary fantasy than a straight horror novel. Next we have Sherwood Smith, The Fox, the sequel to Enda. This is a really good series, a very big epic fantasy series. Sherwood Smith is a very good author, and I think helps out other authors, at least at one time. And she's never really has taken off, but she should have, because she's an excellent writer. This fantasy series is about a ship. So there's, if you like nautical ocean adventures, you're gonna love Enda and the Fox. Next we have The King's Buccaneer by Raymond E. Feist, which I'm sure is a Krondor Rift War novel. I like Raymond Feist. I don't think he's the greatest of the epic fantasy authors, but he certainly writes compelling stories. Next we have Margaret Weis, Amber and Blood, Volume 3 of The Dark Disciple. Margaret Weis writes novels inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, usually with her co-author partner, Tracy Hicks. But I don't remember this, but I've always enjoyed Margaret Weis's books. Next we have Barbara Hambly, Sisters of the Raven. I don't remember this book at all. I don't even remember this author, but I think this is a sequel. I'm not sure. But if you know about this person, let me know in the comments. Next we have Lasher by Anne Rice. I believe this is one of the Mayfair Witches books. I love this series. I think I've talked about it before, but if you're into witches, New Orleans, Anne Rice, gothic, supernatural stories, you're gonna love the Mayfair Witches. Next we have Dawn by Octavia Butler. This book has seen better days. But Octavia Butler is I think she's considered a classic science fiction author, also a person of color, and I believe this is one of the Patternist books. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember this one specifically, but I do always recommend Octavia Butler. Speaking of which, here's another one, Imago, and this one says it's a Hugo and Nebula Award winner. And it says it is book 3 of the Xenogenesis series. Now there are two main characters in this series, sort of a protagonist and antagonist. The protagonist can shapeshift and the antagonist can jump into bodies, except can't jump into hers. Really good series, check it out. Next we have Memory of Fire by Holly Lyle, book 1 of the World Gates. I do remember this series, and I think it is excellent. Holly Lyle, like Sherwood Smith, has never really taken off, but is still an excellent writer. Holly Lyle also, she may do indie books now, but she was a great resource for other writers. But check it out. Next we have Secret Atlas by Michael Stackpole. And I remember this cover, but I don't really remember the series, except that the magic system has to do with map making, which is kind of different, kind of interesting. I wish I could remember more about this novel. Next we have Mona Lisa Overdrive by William Gibson. This is one of the classic Gibson cyberpunk novels, and this and Neuromancer I think are his most well-known. And if you're into science fiction, especially cyberpunk, you have to read Mona Lisa Overdrive. Next we have another Holly Lyle book, Diplomacy of Wolves. And again, I highly recommend Holly Lyle. Next we have Summer of Love by Lisa Mason. I've always been a big fan of the 60s and the hippie culture and the Summer of Love period, which is why I believe I got this novel. Unfortunately, I don't really remember it and doesn't really stick out as a book that I like. Next we have, it's another Chronicles of Prydain. This is book 1, the book of 3. This is a it's a middle grade series from, I believe, the 60s, maybe the 50s. It was made into a Disney movie, I think, called The Black Cauldron, which did not do very well, but it was considered the Rick Riordan of the time. I don't find it very readable, but it's an interesting work in terms of middle grade fantasy history. The one thing I do remember that I loved was this pig that could see into the future. Next we have, a Terry Pratchett, Monstrous Regimen, and you see a sort of female legs underneath a soldier. I was wondering what was on the inside, and it's a little card. I don't know what this is, but sometimes in war and everything else, the best man for the job is a woman. Next up is Jude Fisher's Wild Magic, Book 2 of Fool's Gold. I don't remember this in particular, except I did like this novel, and it has a pretty cool cover. Next up is Clive Barker, Cabal. I think this was made into a movie. I like Clive Barker a lot. This isn't one of my favorites, but I believe this is a pretty decent novel. Okay, I said we had paperbacks, but the rest of the books are not paperbacks, so let's go through them. We have Stephen Erickson, Reaper's Gale, Tale of the Malazan. I'm not sure which book number this is in the series. You can tell how big these books are, and I've talked about this before. I eventually got exhausted reading Stephen Erickson because I thought the books got denser and denser and denser, and it's a pretty long series. But I think the first 3 novels are well worth reading. Next up is Robert Jordan's Knife of Dreams. And this is another Wheel of Time book. As you know, I read the entire series. I do recommend it. I think it's a little difficult to get through if you're reading from the beginning. I read the series as it was being published, so it was spread out over, I believe, a 20-year period. So it is quite ambitious to start the series now, but it's the Amazon Prime series. Didn't like the series that much, but there's a reason why people love this series and have been really excited about the Amazon series. Next we have Inheritance by Christopher Paolini. Now, I put off reading this series for a while. I think it's a trilogy or 4 books. It is a very typical fantasy book, but the interesting thing is Christopher Paolini wrote it when he was a teenager. So it's a really sort of amazing success story. And the books are readable and they are good. But if you are a big epic fantasy fan, you probably will think this is treading a lot of ground that has already been covered in other fantasy series. Next we have The War of Flowers by Tad Williams. Tad Williams is a great epic fantasy writer. I think the Green Angel Tower series is fantastic. I love his science fiction series, The Otherland. And this is about the Fae in the modern world. I mean, take a look at the cover. It's pretty cool. Next up we have King's Shield by Sherwood Smith. Again, I talked about Sherwood Smith before. This is the sequel to Inda and the Fox we just saw earlier, and has a gorgeous cover. Highly recommend Sherwood Smith. Finally, we have Gene Wolfe, Shadow and Claw. This is the first half of the Book of the New Sun, and it's about a torturer. I love these covers. Gene Wolfe is considered a literary fantasy author because his prose is just so beautiful, and I think his books really make you think. My favorite, however, is the Book of the Long Sun. Okay, the final thing in this book are, I don't know how these got in here, but they are some Dungeons and Dragons dice. And I believe this is a 20-sided die I used a lot, this blue 20-sided. And the only other book in here is the word menu. The word menu is great for a writer or people doing Dungeons and Dragons campaigns as a resource because it is, look it up, Google it, the word menu, because it's sort of an all-in-one dictionary thesaurus almanac. For instance, if you're interested in ships, it will take you, you would look up ships and it will tell you different types of ships, navigation terms, everything sort of all in one place. Okay, let's just do one more box of books. Okay, the first up is, this is called the Necronomicon. Someone made this for me. It's a as a Dungeons and Dragons source book for, I mean, it's in pretty dismal shape, but it's to help Dungeons Masters find, there used to be a skull in here, but figure out names on the fly because it is a book of baby names. Okay, there's a bunch of hardbacks in here. Let's just go through it. This is a Doubleday cookbook. I don't know why it's in here. There is an old book. This is one of my older books, Brewster's Millions. This was written, I believe, in the 20s. I don't know if this is what edition this is. It looks like it's an original, 1902. That's crazy. But it's about a man that inherits $1 million. This has been made into a movie a couple times, never very well. But it's about a man that inherits $1 million from an uncle that didn't like his father. But the catch is that he could win millions and millions of dollars or inherit millions and millions of dollars if he spends $1 million in a year. And it's a funny book. I think it holds up as very readable even today. Okay, we have a bunch of old books here. A Diary from Dixie by Mary Boykin Chestnut. And the reason I have it is because I am related to Mary Boykin Chestnut on my father's side. So, Diary from Dixie. And a couple more old books. The Inevitable Millionaires. And Jane Austen, Harvard Classics. I think I got these from my father's bookshelf when he died, so some oldies. This is not an oldie. This is Storm Constantine, The Shades of Time and Memory. Again, this is her second foray into the Rathru world, and I would always recommend the first Rathru trilogy, which is fantastic. Very queer, very gothic, very punk. Really a writer ahead of her time. And we have Martha Wells, The Gate of Gods, author of The Ships of Air. I think this is part of that series. Yeah, the Fall of Ilrian trilogy. Really enjoyed this trilogy. It looks fantasy, but I believe there's an underlying science fiction basis to it. Next we have, oh, this is a shame. This is my George R.R. Martin book, but apparently I lost the cover. This is A Dance with Dragons, but it has a pretty cool mandala on the front of the cover. Next we have China Miéville, Kraken. Now, this isn't my favorite China Miéville book. I think you'd want to start with Perdido Street Station. I think the category he's known for is called diesel punk, which is sort of similar to steampunk, except take it a bit further into the technological revolution. All his books, all his writing is so raw. It's so punk. He puts the punk into diesel punk. Highly recommend this author. Okay, we just have a few books left, 3 of which is a Percy Jackson, Titan's Curse, Sea of Monsters, and The Last Olympian. And if you didn't know, I do really like Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. Okay, we just have 2 more things in this box. One of which is the novel Necroscope by Brian Lumley. I think I've mentioned this before. Brian Lumley is a horror writer who is heavily inspired by Lovecraft. And this Necroscope series, there's quite a few novels in the series, is more vampire related, but it still has that cosmic horror element. My favorite Brian Lumley books, however, is his Titus Crow books. And the last thing I have to show you is not a book, but apparently someone gave me a Star Trek coaster set, which I've never opened. But we have Kirk, Spock. So this is a nice way to wrap up the video, something a little cheesy, and maybe I'll start using these coasters, I don't know. So that is it for this unboxing video. If you want to see another one, I'll put it right here. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of these books, if you have read some, or if you want to read some. And let me know if you want to see more unboxing videos. Though honestly, I think I'm almost at the end of the unboxings. I just have a few more boxes left. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.